Hi everybody, welcome to an Easter special of IndyCar on Friday. It is of course, I'm always got to check the date, you know what I'm like. It is of course the 19th of April today, and it's Good Friday, and Good Friday is a time, well, for reflection on a lot of things. And today's a symbolic day for an awful lot of different people for different reasons, one of which, if you don't take the religious part of this for a moment, but if you live in Northern Ireland or the Republic of Ireland, then today is a significant day for you because it marked the end of a period of extreme violence on the island of Ireland and an extended period of 20 years of almost uninterrupted peace until now. Those of you who've watched the news this morning will know that there were disturbances in Derry last night which led to the death of a young reporter when shots were fired by a masked man into a street full of protesters, and petrol bombs were thrown at police officers. We saw the pictures on the TV. This is a reminder, if we needed it, of what's always at risk in Ireland. One of the reasons why the issue of peace in Ireland has become central to the debate on Brexit, because Brexit affects this peace process. It jeopardises it, and it puts the lives of people at risk. And we saw that last night when a reporter was shot dead by a gunman in the street who fired indiscriminately towards police officers, knowing full well that there were a lot of other people standing on the street behind the police officers watching what was going on in a housing estate. The police had been taking action to raid certain houses looking for guns and explosives belonging to a group called the New IRA, who they believe was responsible for last night's killing. Now, quite apart from the fact that that's happened, excuse me, Good Friday is historically and biblically a time of hope, because it is the beginning of the Easter celebration. It is the beginning of what Christianity actually was about, which was Jesus being betrayed, being killed by the Romans, being buried, and then rising from the grave miraculously. And it's the story of the resurrection that Easter is mainly about. The Easter eggs and things like that are basically a way of symbolising it for children in a fun way by, mimicking the rolling away of the stone from the tomb and creating that as an egg. Now, it's very confusing for children, the Easter message. I remember many years ago, my niece, who probably won't mind me telling this story, was asked what she thought Easter was about when she was in primary one, and she said she thought it was because Jesus had been killed by a giant egg. Now, that just goes to show you how easy it is to mix a message up when you're trying to teach people something. I used to be, until about 10 years ago, I was pretty much a very religious person, and I was even a Sunday school teacher for a while. But something happened, and I realised that the reality of the world that we live in was not tying in with what the belief system was saying should happen, that there's a living God, these things shouldn't happen. And I began to realise I was forcing the facts and twisting them round to fit into this religious narrative, and I didn't really believe it anymore. And so eventually I became an atheist. But having said that, the significance of Easter has never really deserted me, and I still see it this springtime, this time of renewal where the weather warms up and things start to grow again. Spring lambs, spring chickens, all of these symbolic things that we associate with Easter are to do with renewal and rebirth, which is part of the message of what Easter was about and what Christianity was based upon. But it's more symbolic than that even now, because although it's a symbolic day for Northern Ireland, and it's, shall we say, a very vulnerable time in the history of Northern Ireland at the moment, it's also a time when other things are beginning to happen which I think the Easter message could apply to. Now, one of the things that you will have watched on the television screens this morning and probably yesterday is the Extinction Rebellion protests in London. And these are people who are so frightened about what's happening with the global environment that they're prepared to lie in the streets and to protest by civil disobedience, completely peaceful protest, camping in the streets, blocking bridges, blocking the entrance to railway stations, and basically making themselves a nuisance but without being violent. And what they are saying is it is time for us to wake up and look at the damage that human activity has done to the planet. You'll also know that Sir David Attenborough put out a programme yesterday about the damage that we are doing to the Earth and the urgency of the need for action to halt climate change, to stop the warming of the Earth any further. And to do that needs drastic action, not just by us, but by governments across the planet. This is no longer a case of we're going to buy less plastic packaging. This isn't a case of switching your heating from oil to gas. It's no longer a case of fitting solar panels on your roof. This goes much, much deeper than that, and it goes to governments and it goes to national strategies. But the interesting thing about it is the way that everything has come together, this Extinction Rebellion, David Attenborough's apocalyptic warning. I mean, David Attenborough, remember, is 92 years old. He's seen the decline of species throughout his entire career. And at 92 is a hell of an age. He's looking remarkably good for it. But still fighting to rescue the planet from human stupidity. Now, some people say that there are solutions to this that can be achieved through market pressures, by getting people to switch from petrol cars to electric cars and so on, and switching to renewable energy. And though all these things are needed, and all these things are actually happening, it's happening too slowly. What's needed is much more drastic action by every government on every continent. And governments, the trouble is, we in the Northern Hemisphere, we are actually historically the ones who wrecked the planet, because we've been polluting it far, far longer than anybody else in the Southern Hemisphere. The Southern Hemisphere is relatively speaking, innocent of the crime of polluting the planet's atmosphere. It was us, with our coal burning, our oil burning, our petrol burning, our diesel burning. All of that burning and all of that pollution has forced all of these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Now, yes, there is a period of natural warming which the Earth goes through in cycles, where it warms up gradually and then it cools down gradually, and we get ice ages and warm periods. But what's happening at the moment is far faster than that. It's been estimated now that if the ocean warms by 1 single degree centigrade on average in the next few years, then the sea level will rise about 8 feet. And at high tide, in a city such as Glasgow, where I am at the moment, that is enough to overtop the banks of the river and to flood places like the BBC Television Centre, the Science Centre, the Hydro Arena, the financial districts of the city, most of Govan, most of Yoker, Clydebank. Places all along the riverside would flood, simply because the ocean, or the world's oceans, have heated up by 1 single degree. And the thermal expansion and the rise of the sea level would be enough to flood virtually every coastal city on the planet, which is going to throw governments and cities into chaos. That's going to cause damage. There's going to be massive insurance bills running into trillions of dollars. The human cost and the misery it would cause in places like Bangladesh, which would be substantially below water by then. Holland would probably be wrecked unless they can do something to bolster their sea defences quickly. Luckily, the Dutch are very good at that kind of geoengineering, but we are not. And people in Bangladesh are not. People in Louisiana and the southern states of the United States are already losing a football pitch-sized piece of land every 45 minutes to the sea. And these are things that are happening right now. And we have to do something about it, not just you and I. But what I wanted to do with this broadcast today was to just link Easter, link the idea of renewal and rebirth, and basically fixing things, creating a new method of doing things, basically being reborn. But it's a much bigger task than just one country doing it. Initially, I wanted Scotland to renew itself, to become a new country, to be free from the influence of Westminster, free from the control of Westminster, which has been dragging us down this polluting pathway for decades, by basically pumping oil out of our part of the North Sea and selling it to everybody else. The oil itself is a valuable asset, but it doesn't need to be burned. There are other things that you can do with oil which make it more valuable and it can be reused over and over again. It doesn't need to be burned as a fuel. So what I would like to see, and what I hope to see in the coming months as the independence campaign starts to gather pace, because I know it's going to do that very soon, is for us to start thinking of renewing Scotland. But not just renewing the country itself, but renewing the way it does things, the way its businesses run, changing the profit motive from profit to the benefit of people and their environment, instead of enriching 1% of the population whilst polluting the planet and making everyone else poorer. We need a different way of doing things. And I've always seen independence as a route to that. And it's necessary, I think, now for a new direction in Scottish politics as well, which reflects this urge to renew the country and to lead from the front when it comes to global carbon reduction, and to helping assist in the negation of all types of pollution, not just carbon dioxide, but methane from farming, from all kinds of emissions from different types of industries. Scotland needs to be reborn and recreated as a completely green place with zero carbon, no carbon footprint at all, no burning at all other than perhaps some wood burning in rural communities. I'd like to see the repopulation of the Highlands. I'd like to see people returning to working the land in the Highlands. I'd like to see a renewal of industries in a way which doesn't harm the environment, a switch from hot processes to less damaging cold processes. So moving away from high temperature metals like steel towards things like aluminium and recyclable plastic materials that we can use at lower temperatures. Now, these things all take time, I know, but they're already happening. But what I would like Scotland to become is to become a showcase for every other country on the planet to follow. We have been successful as a small country for centuries because we're so inventive. And I think it's time we use that inventive nature to do something positive, not just for ourselves, but for all the countries on the rest of the planet. We can lead from the front in innovation in green technology in a way that other people are unable to do, because we have immense natural resources all around us. Fantastic amounts of natural energy exist all around the coastline, and there are thousands of miles of Scottish coastline with tides, with wave energy, with I've mentioned tidal energy, but with offshore wind as well. The place is absolutely heaving with natural energy, including, incidentally, solar energy. Although we don't tend to think of ourselves as a sunny place, the sun does shine here. There is daylight, and where there's daylight, there is energy to be got. It's time that we had a government which doesn't just look at profit and loss. It doesn't just look at the stock markets. It doesn't judge everything by GDP, but instead judges by how wealthy and how secure its population are, how it looks after its elderly, how it looks after its young, and how it educates them, how they become integral to this plan to renew the country and to create an industrial and an economic system which is sustainable for centuries to come, and which will halt the greenhouse emissions that everyone is talking about and everybody is worrying about. It's a tipping point for the planet at the moment. So many political things are going on in the world at the moment, partly because the capitalist free market economic model of global trade has hit the buffers. I've mentioned this before. You'll notice that interest rates are virtually zero. You cannot make money by saving it anymore, and that's because there is no value left in the economic global system, because it's run out, it's been used up by the wealthy. They have hoovered all of the value out of all of the liquid currency that flows around the globe. It keeps industry going, it keeps trade going. It's gone. It's been taken away by the wealthy and hoarded. And because of that, the system is failing. And now it's time for countries that are ingenious, like Scotland, to come up with a new way of running their country and of trading with other people, and a new way of distributing the wealth that creates more fairly and more evenly, so that instead of having to tax the companies, we can just simply tax the individuals because they share in all the profits that the companies make. That makes taxation much easier, and it means that people all across the country will be earning an awful lot more. They'll be paying more taxes, yes, but their services are going to be superb, and they're going to live in one of the most peaceful, green and clean countries anywhere on the planet. And this is why I think Easter for us as Scottish people should be a symbolic time, a time when the country renews itself. And this is why I'm mentioning this. It feels a little bit, I'm sorry if it feels a little bit like Late Call or Thought for the Day on Radio 4, but this is an almost religious broadcast. I'm not being religious here, I'm just being realistic. But why don't we just take this opportunity of Easter and use it as a symbol for what we need to do? And it's renewal and rebirth that I'm talking about. Human activity on this planet is wrecking the ecology, it's wrecking the climate, it's polluting the oceans, it's filling the world up with human garbage. And we have to take responsibility and ownership of that problem and say, this is how we're going to fix it. And this is how Scotland is fixing it. And this is how the rest of the world could copy us, because this we know works. We've tried it, it works. We've developed these systems. We've got an economy which runs without burning a single molecule of carbon, of hydrocarbons anywhere at all. And if we can do so, then other people will see that it can be done. And if they see it can be done, then everybody will start to do it. The economy of the world needs to run on two things, electricity and hydrogen, two of the most common forms of both energy and matter in the whole universe. And hydrogen and oxygen, which are plentiful on the earth in the form of water, make a fantastic fuel. If you separate the hydrogen and oxygen out and then burn them in an engine, all you get is more water. You don't get any pollution. So if you want to burn anything at all, burn hydrogen and oxygen because it's clean. We just need to find ways of converting water into hydrogen and oxygen using renewable energy, and we're already doing it. But we need more of it, and we need a government that's fully committed to it. A government which is not going to do what the Growth Commission says and run the new Scotland as though it was the Conservative Party running it. The Conservative Party is in the pockets of the petrol industry. It's in the pockets of the nuclear industry, and it's in the pockets of just about every big multi-transnational corporation. And we need a government which is not in anybody's pocket, a government which tells companies how to behave, not the other way around, and a government which works for the whole country, one which designs systems which make people better off no matter what their education, no matter what their physical state, or no matter what their age or their ethnicity. And to do that, we need somebody who can see the big picture and will take a long look at this. I'm not talking about the next 5 or 10 years, I'm talking about the next 100 years. And this is what's wrong with Western capitalism. It looks 5 years ahead and that's about it. Everything is short term, everything is for profit, everything is for small numbers of wealthy people. That has to alter. It has to alter so that we can still use a similar system, but where the wealth that flows through the system does not end up in the pockets of so few people. And if we do that, and we start thinking about how our activities affect the rest of the world, then things will start to improve. But at the moment, they're not going to do that. The people who are running Extinction Rebellion have got the right idea. Everybody needs to take part in this, and Extinction Rebellion has just pointed out something which is bloody obvious. And the fact that the BBC, and all credit to them incidentally, the fact that the BBC have had Sir David Attenborough putting out this programme is great. So, well done BBC. For a change, I'm going to sing the praises of the BBC, because for once in the last few years they have done something decent. They have given a platform for Sir David Attenborough to tell people what needs to happen. This is a final warning, by the way. This is the last chance saloon as far as the world is concerned. If we don't do something now, our children are going to suffer. Their children will suffer. And as David Attenborough says, our societies will break down. They will not be able to survive this. There'll be food riots. People will be destitute and homeless because of the flooding. People will be displaced. There'll be refugees flooding in, far more than you've had from Syria. Far, far more than that. And Most of these refugees will be our own people who live round the coast who've been flooded out. Some islands will be underwater. Sometimes the tides will be too strong for ships to sail because the volumes of water involved are going to be much larger. When your sea level rises, the tide increases dramatically because there's more water to move, and it has to move the same distance through the same space. So it goes faster, it's more powerful. Everything is affected by this. Anyway, I'm ranting, so I'm going to stop. But this Easter, let's think about renewal, let's think about renewing Scotland, and let's think about Scotland being a shop window for how the rest of the world should do its business, how the rest of the world should run itself, and how we can repair the damage that we've done to the planet. That's it for today. I'll see you all later on. Have a great Easter weekend. Enjoy wherever you are, enjoy the good weather. But just remember, this good weather may not last that long. And this good weather, although it's nice at the moment, it might get much, much hotter for longer. We might get stronger winds, we might get more hurricanes, and we will definitely get more flooding. So, like I say, enjoy the weather while it's here, but bear in mind that nothing is permanent, and everything that we're doing on the planet is going to affect this weather. It's not random. See you later. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.